The morning your promotion was announced, you were already in the next meeting. That's the first thing. Not because it's unusual, because it didn't feel unusual, not even slightly. You were 31, one bedroom in Midtown. You'd been there 3 years and still hadn't hung anything on the walls. Not because you didn't have things to hang, because every time you thought about it, something more important was already open on your screen. Your manager called you a natural problem solver in your last review. You wrote it down, underlined it, moved to the next item. You didn't ask what the problem was. You didn't ask whether solving it was making you anything other than useful. Useful had stopped feeling like a partial answer somewhere around year 2. You didn't notice when it stopped feeling like one at all. The promotion email, 9:47 a.m., Tuesday, Senior Director of Product, 3 years ahead of schedule. Your name, the title, the number, 12 lines, clean, done. By 9:52, you were in a room with 6 people talking about Q3. You read it once, closed it. Thought, I'll feel this tonight. You didn't feel it that night. You didn't feel it the night after. At some point you stopped waiting for it and filed the email in a folder labeled admin and moved on, which is its own kind of answer if you're willing to look at it. There was a notebook, small black cover, actual paper. End of each week, you'd write down one thing that surprised you. A problem that cracked open differently than you expected. A person who said something that stayed with you. The last entry was dated 14 months before the promotion. You still carried the notebook in your bag every day. Empty. 14 months. Every day. Within 2 years of that promotion, people in your industry knew your name. Not LinkedIn known, actually known, the kind where someone says your name in a room and other people nod without needing context. At conferences, someone would approach you during the break, introduce themselves, reference something you'd written or said. You'd shake their hand, hold eye contact, respond with something warm and specific enough that they'd leave feeling seen. Here's the thing you never told anyone. By the time you reached the coffee station 15 feet away, you couldn't have described their face. Not forgot, couldn't have described. Like the image never fully committed to memory because some part of your brain had already decided it wasn't load-bearing information. You weren't being cold. You weren't performing warmth either. It was real in the moment. You just had a moment. Singular. Present tense only. What came before it and after it lived in a different layer entirely, and that layer was always running Q3. Your parents visited that spring. Your mother hadn't seen the apartment in 8 months. She walked in, set her bag down, looked around, clean surfaces, organized shelves, single wine glass upside down on the drying rack. And her eyes moved, just briefly, to the bare walls. She didn't say anything about them. That was worse than if she had. Your father had asked 3 times. Fishing cabin upstate. Just the 2 of you, long weekend, no agenda. The 3rd time you said you'd check your calendar. He said, of course, no rush. And there was something in how quickly he said it. How practiced. Like he'd already written the ending before you answered. You rescheduled. Legitimate reasons, real ones. He didn't bring up a 4th time. Not out of anger. That's what made it stay with you later. There was no anger in it. Just a quiet recalibration. A man who loved you, learning in real time the new geometry of your availability. A door that closed so slowly, neither of you heard it shut. 35. VP of Product. Corner office. Window facing the Hudson. Actual water, not another building's wall. Your assistant, Priya, kept your calendar in 90-minute blocks with a precision that occasionally made you wonder if she understood your life better than you did. One afternoon, she knocked and said you'd missed your lunch again, 3rd day running. And did you want her to push your 4 o'clock so you could eat something before the board call? You said no, you were fine. She looked at you for a moment, not long, not dramatically, just a half second of something passing across her face, and said, okay, and closed the door. You thought about that half second for the rest of the afternoon, what she'd seen, whether it was concern or just calculation, whether it mattered
Which? You answered 17 emails before the board call. You don't remember a single one.
You had optimized yourself into a system. The system worked. That was the problem. It worked so cleanly, so consistently, that there was no breakdown to point to, no obvious moment to say, here, this is where it went wrong. Systems don't fail loudly. They just run, and running starts to feel, after enough years, like the same thing as living.
At 36, they asked you to give the keynote. Industry conference, 800 people, 40 minutes. You prepared for 2 weeks. You stood at the podium and gave a talk about building with intention, about not losing the human element in the pursuit of scale, about staying connected to why you started. You were the best person in that room at talking about it. On the way out, a woman stopped you near the exit, said it was exactly what she needed to hear, said she'd been so focused on hitting targets that she'd lost track of what any of it was for. Asked how you stayed grounded. You told her, check in with yourself regularly. The work will always expand to fill the space you give it. You have to protect the rest. She thanked you, eyes full, meant every word of it. In the car back to the hotel, you thought about what you'd said. The advice, turned it over, then you tried to apply it, tried to check in, tried to locate the thing underneath the work, the original thing, the reason that existed before you learned to perform it for rooms full of people. You drove 40 minutes in silence. You didn't find it. There was a guy on your team, Marcus, 26. The specific hunger of someone who has made their career the primary project of their life. 8 a.m. ideas, late nights without being asked, the kind of commitment that only exists before you've seen where it leads. He knocked one afternoon, asked for 15 minutes. You gave him 12. You checked your phone twice. He noticed. You could tell he noticed. But he was sharp enough to keep going, to not make it a thing, to take what was offered and work with it. On his way out, he stopped at the door. Said, talking to you was invaluable. Said he wanted to be exactly where you are in 10 years. Zero irony, complete sincerity, the kind that's hard to be in the same room with when you know what you know. You said, work hard, stay focused, don't lose sight of why you started. He nodded, thanked you, left. You sat in the quiet of your corner office, the Hudson gray and flat behind you. And the thought arrived, not as guilt. Guilt would have been cleaner, but as something more, like a clear-eyed inventory. He's going to carry that advice for years. Write it in a notebook, maybe. Tell someone else eventually. And I said it the way I say everything now. Accurately, efficiently, from a place that used to have something living in it.
Here's what no one tells you at 26, when you're calling it temporary, calling it investment, calling it the phase before the life that starts later. The sacrifice doesn't stay in a box labeled sacrifice. It spreads without a meeting, without a decision. Every email over dinner, every deadline over the call, every plan that gets rescheduled once and then quietly, without malice, just never rescheduled again.
Over 10 years, those aren't choices. They're architecture. They become the floor plan of who you are, the personality that reads every room perfectly and stop being changed by any of them. That turns presence into performance and calls it professionalism. That got so good at the work that the work became the only room with the lights on. And then one Tuesday, not a hard Tuesday, just a Tuesday, you reach for something inside yourself, and there's nothing there. Not sadness, not emptiness exactly. Just the shape of something that used to be there. The outline of it. The negative space where a person used to live before he decided, without ever quite deciding, to trade that in for something that could be measured. The company went public that fall. Your name was in the prospectus. Stock opened 11% up. Dinners, speeches, rooms full of people with eyes that were bright and genuine and full of something you recognized from a significant distance. A journalist called for a quote on resilience. You gave them something precise and true. You'd said a version of it before. The car home moved through the city, lit up the way cities get lit when something large has happened. You sat in the back seat with your phone buzzing in your hand, and you waited deliberately to feel the thing this moment was supposed to produce. The city moved past the window. Nothing arrived. There's a version of you that's still in there somewhere. The one who kept the notebook, who pressed his face against the glass on long drives just to feel the cold through it. Who was surprised by things. Genuinely surprised. Not strategically open to new information, but actually caught off guard by the world. That version didn't win. This one did. And in the back seat, city lights sliding past, with everything built and documented and attached to a number that went up. You couldn't remember whose approval you'd originally been building toward. Whether there was ever a person on the other side of it waiting to say, yes, that's enough, you can stop now. Or whether somewhere along the way, the winning sealed itself into a loop. Self-justifying, self-perpetuating, no exit. And the person who started it all walked out a side door you never thought to watch. Which leaves us with one question. If you win everything, what's left of you?